Welcome everyone, and thanks for joining me. I hope that this session will be useful, interesting, and maybe inspirational. Bethan already introduced me professionally, but perhaps why I'm interested in this topic. I was very honored by one of my students who went to the University of Chicago, nominated me for an Outstanding Educator Award a couple of years ago. And when you get the award, you get a little letter from the student explaining why they nominated you. And this particular student said that it was because I'd been inspirational. But I sort of thought, well, that's good, but I didn't really know what that meant or why, or how I could keep doing it, or as a head of department, how I could encourage my colleagues to be inspirational. And I didn't remember learning anything about that in my PGC or even my master's in education. I thought, well, I should do some research and some writing. So I did the cons writing competition. I've also published some articles, which I'll share a link at the end, which contains things like links to the secondary research I did and so on. So look out for that at the end. So inspirational teaching, what does it mean? Well, just going to try and move through the slides here. Right, so teaching, I mean, we're all teachers, I assume, and we do an incredibly complex and varied job. And I put these pictures up here because we can see just how many different skills you have to be a competent and effective teacher. You've got to manage the classroom, help students with questions, grade work, attend meetings, and the list is endless, really. And all of these skills that make you an effective teacher, well, you know, you have to learn them, you have to perfect them, and you can easily be observed manifesting those skills in your professional life. But when I thought about becoming a teacher long ago, none of these pictures really represented what I thought it was going to be like or what I wanted it to be like for me. This picture really represents what I thought it was going to be like and what I wanted it to be like. And for those of you who haven't seen this film, this is a Dead Poets Society with Robin Williams. I rewatched it recently. Just a wonderful film about a teacher who is an inspiration. To give you the context, if you haven't seen it, it's set in, I think, the 1960s in a very old-fashioned and stuffy American prep school or boarding school, a bit like one I went to, I think. And the students were learning poetry, and it was all very sort of stuffy and boring until the Robin Williams character comes along. He's an inspirational teacher. He's so passionate. The students just fall in love with learning, and they fall in love with his style of teaching. And here he is being carried aloft with a joy, and that was sort of what I thought my teaching career would be like. So, well, I mean, it hasn't all been like that. I mean, it hasn't ever been like that, but it hasn't been far from it sometimes. And so I just want to sort of keep referring back to that, because that's what I think maybe all of us when we were younger might have imagined it being like. So, I mean, if we look at the dictionary definition of what inspiration might mean, well, Oxford has it as being mentally stimulated to do or feel something, maybe something creative. I think the key word there is about emotion. It's about feeling. It's something about being connected to, in this case, learning on an emotional level, or being urged to do something creative. There's another definition here which mentions motivation, which I've recently been doing some more research into motivation, and I really think my next piece of writing is going to be about the connection between motivation and inspirational teaching styles. So just to talk about motivation a little bit. So motivation, a lot of theorists of motivation divided into two sort of opposing, if you like, types of motivation: intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. So intrinsic motivation would be when you do something for the love of it, for its inherent satisfaction, and why you want to do it. It comes from within you, the challenge, the fun, but nothing to do with rewards. And extrinsic motivation, on the other hand, is all about what you get out of it. So whether you get paid or whether you get a grade, and it can also be a negative outcomes, like you might have a fear of what happens if you don't do something. So the carrot and the stick. would be a way to characterize extrinsic motivation. And I think the reason I'm talking about this is that I really think that inspirational teaching is about developing students' intrinsic motivation for learning, for doing the task. Because we're always asking kids to do stuff for us. Do this homework, do this piece of classwork, and this experiment. I'm a biology teacher, by the way, or study for this exam. And now you're trying to get them to do something. So you've always got the carrot and the stick. But the third way is to make them want to do it because it's fun, interesting, or it makes them feel excited or so on. And I'll be referring back to that later. So in this talk, I'll be just talking mostly about intrinsic motivation. And this picture, which I've copied off of the internet somewhere, basically just sort of represents that. So we're trying to think about how we can motivate a student intrinsically as inspirational teachers. So I just wanted to give everyone a minute to stop and think, because I'm going to present the results of some research, and I want to know whether it tallies with your own experience of how someone might have inspired you. So just think back for a moment and try to think of a teacher that you might have had either in university, a high school, primary school, or just a mentor of yours as an adult who has inspired you to want to learn, or with a love of learning. And what was it about them? The way that they taught, or the way that they were as a person, that made them an inspirational person? And what did that do to you? How was it different from the way you learned otherwise? And maybe they made you want to be a teacher. Or it's sometimes easier to find a non-example, a teacher who put you off of a subject. I always sort of chuckle when I say this, because for me, anyway, it's a lot easier to think of a non-example, maybe because of the draconian nature of the school that I went to, but or maybe because it's just easier to be that way as a teacher. But anyway, so maybe take a moment and think. Maybe it came to your mind like that. Someone you remember. Usually we remember them right away. So I'm going to present now the results of some research that I did into the literature about what inspirational teaching does. So if you're inspired by a teacher, perhaps you've thought about this teacher, you just want to learn, you just want to work harder, and you want to do better, and you end up doing better. Inspirational teachers open their students' minds. I think we all know what it's like when we try to change somebody's mind about something, and their mind is closed to new ideas. And as teachers, we're always trying to get our learners, our students, to open up their minds to something new. And sometimes we might even have to change their minds about something. So if you're an inspirational teacher, their minds will open and be more receptive to learning. I really like this finding, which was that students and teachers both enjoy learning more when the style of teaching is inspirational in nature. A journey of discovery that we're both on. Inspirational teaching is flexible and adaptive to each situation. For example, a student might express an interest or ask a question, and the lesson can not say go off on a massive tangent, because maybe we can all remember a teacher who, when we were young, we knew if we could just get them off the subject and they would ramble on, we wouldn't have to do any work. Maybe that says more about me, but you could adapt to something that happened unexpected, or something that was in the news that day, and you can be flexible and not be stuck to the syllabus. And after having been inspired, these effects seem to last, they can last a lifetime, because it forms how you see yourself, how you perceive yourself, your self-confidence, and what you think you're capable of as a learner. And also, the way that you look at learning itself and the subject itself. It can be incredibly positive for a person to have an inspirational teacher. It's pretty rare out there, according to the research that I've read, finding a real inspirational teacher is like, it might be not everyone is inspirational. And that's not to say that everyone can't be inspirational, but I'll come to that idea a little bit later. I could paraphrase Abraham Lincoln here, who said, you can fool some people all of the time, and you can fool all of the people some of the time, but you can't fool all the people. Or is it please? I can't remember which one it is, but anyway, you can inspire some people all of the time, etc. I wouldn't expect that every single student would be inspired in the same way by the same teacher at the same time. I like to think, well, if you're trying really hard and you inspire one child today with learning, or a student, then that's an amazing thing that we mustn't forget. Yes, all the other students can be in the lesson and learn, but if someone is inspired, we need to celebrate it. So you can have a teacher who inspires one learner, but not everyone in the class. So what does the research say that these inspirational teachers are like, and what do they have in common? So I had to read a lot of papers and distilled them all into a very small amount of space here. But in general, in my research, I found that inspirational teachers are all effective professionals with the skills that you need, the pedagogy. They have their teaching chops, the things that you learn in PGCE. They know how to do. They can organize a class, they can plan lessons, they know the curriculum, they know the subject. They have all of these sorts of characteristics, but then it's and then some. I was kind of happy to find that you don't have to be a master of technology. There was no correlation in one of the studies I read between use of technology. It's just sort of how you use it, not what you use. So you don't have to have a interactive whiteboard and digital sensors and all this stuff. You can still be inspirational without the highest of technology. One of the common characteristics that came up among inspirational teachers in the literature was that they're supportive and friendly and caring and patient and kind and have fun. And they have these sort of warm, fuzzy characteristics that you don't really find in many teacher training manuals. But it was mentioned again and again by students and fellow teachers and so on, that these sort of personal qualities, which I call virtues, were often present. They knew how to use humor. A really interesting finding was, I think I've always thought humor was important in sort of stimulating the class and breaking the ice and getting people comfortable. But there was a specific section in one paper about sarcasm, which made me think of the Pink Floyd song. Sarcasm is just highly discouraged. I had a very good friend who thought he was the funniest teacher ever. He was a funny guy and a good friend, but very sarcastic. And especially in the international context, it just did not go down well. No one knew what he was doing or why. Why is he lying? Well, what's happening? And they didn't like it very much at all. So sarcasm, if you want to use humor, sarcasm is not the one to use. Just making light of something funny that happens in the classroom, or sharing a meme, or in the parlance of our times, about science or whatever subject you teach. It goes a long way. It makes you seem more human and so on. So I'll talk a bit more about these virtues a bit later. And then another thing that came up was all inspirational teachers sort of had this positive attitude. They were enthusiastic and passionate and innovative, and enjoy their job as well and want to be there. There's nothing like walking into a classroom and having a teacher there who doesn't want to be there and isn't happy to see you walk in. Imagine how that feels as a student. So if we have on the left that sort of classic skills and on the right the inspirational teacher, and try and compare what I found directly, you could think of the effective sort of skilled teacher as filling vessels with knowledge. In the old analogy, students memorizing knowledge, skills. The teachers can learn these skills that we do on a PGCE. For managers, they tend to observe and quantify how good teachers are at these things, because you can easily see a lesson plan and you can see the students, the grade book, and are the books marked, and are the students quiet, and have you asked open and closed questions, and sort of things that are skills. And as a result, leaders and systems of teacher observation tend to value these things because they can be counted and measured easily. But the research seems to show that the outcomes of this learning may only last as long as the exams, and that's sort of it. And some people may say, well, yeah, what's wrong with that? My students got great grades, and there isn't anything. But that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about inspirational teaching. Kindling fires. There's a couple of cliches up there, but the old idea of education being about lighting the fire of burning desire for knowledge, having students not just memorizing things, but they're curious and eager to learn more. They're researching things, they're asking questions, they're looking around them after the lesson saying, oh, that's just like what we did in school. Rather than skills that you can learn, I think virtues are more the word to use here, is the word to use here. A virtue goes back to Aristotle, who believed he's trying to educate his son on how to be a good man. Virtues are like muscles that you have to exercise by using them every day. So a virtue is sort of part of your character or your personality that makes you who you are. It's a bit different from a skill. Not to say that I think everyone has these virtues to some extent, but to what extent do they know they're important such that they make an active, conscious effort to use them every day in their teaching? Might be a bit different. Very hard to observe, how the teacher was nice and showed a good sense of humor with his students today, and doesn't appear on any of the checklists of classroom observation, or none that I've seen anyway. Or the student was kind and caring towards, the student had their appendix out last week and you bothered to ask how they were feeling, and then, that sort of thing. It makes a big difference to a student, but doesn't often get noticed. And therefore, is it being asked for? I mean, I noticed in a job advert the other day that they said, well, we want inspirational teachers, but I do sort of wonder, how do they just say that, or do they even know what that means? Do they know what it means, or what they're looking for? I suspect perhaps not always anyway. And we get these outcomes that are lifelong and transformative to the person's character and aspirations, which that makes it important. Well, to me anyway. I think education should be more about grades and numbers. And that's my opinion. So, as an educational leader myself, I wanted to put it all together and make it digestible and useful for any teachers who wanted to learn from this and not have to read dozens and dozens of papers and come to synthesize it. So I wanted to build a model that shows the features of inspirational teaching and teachers, and try to think about how it could be used to help other teachers become more inspirational, so that we can have more of this rare and precious thing in the schools around the world, really. And the final idea was, well, what is it about some school environments that makes it more conducive, makes teachers find it easier to be more inspirational, and also less, the opposite? Why is it so hard for teachers to be inspirational in some environments? And how can we change the environments so that it is a place, so that a school is a place where teachers can be inspirational? So that's Abraham Maslow, famous psychologist. And I was inspired by having learned about Maslow's work when I was studying business studies in A-level, long time ago. I thought it was sort of clever the way that he'd done all his research after the war in the United States into consumerism and business and work. And it was really about motivation and why people want to go to work and work hard. And I'm sure most of you are familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of needs, where at the bottom you have the sort of lower level hygiene factors. And then as you go up, you get more and more sort of harder to reach satisfaction of life, aspect, or I don't exactly know how to express that, but anyway, so I was inspired by this, and I thought maybe inspirational teachers, maybe that's a pathway, that's a sort of model that we could use. I mean, is that how some teachers are inspirational? So I put an empty pyramid here, and I've put some of the characteristics of inspirational teachers. I wonder where you think some of these might go. And now I created this this hierarchy myself, and I've based it on a lot of thinking and a lot of experience and a lot of research, but in the end, it is just my creation. So what would go on the bottom and what would go higher up on the hierarchy? Maybe if you think about it for a second, and I'll tell you what I think, and well, who knows who's right. There are plenty of critics of Maslow's hierarchy anyway. And in the end, there's no absolute truth with this sort of thing. It's just a model for us to think about. So I'll go ahead and show you now what I came up with. So I decided that the pedagogy, the skills of teaching, would be on the bottom. And there is some sort of reason behind that, because as I showed in my earlier research, all the inspirational teachers already they sort of had that and then some, right? And so the virtues would go above that. The idea would be that that's the baseline. If you want to be an inspirational teacher, you've got to know how to teach first. Seems pretty logical. I then thought that all the characteristics that I had researched would fit nicely into two categories above that. Ones that are to do with relationships between students and connections between the teacher and the students. And above that, to do with the teacher's passion for both teaching and the subject that they're teaching, which are subtly different, but I think it's important. And then you could reach your pinnacle, your self-actualization, where the students get inspired and they're intrinsically motivated by you. Those are the virtues. Okay, so down at the bottom, I would find it hard to imagine anyone being inspirational if they couldn't achieve all those things. I wouldn't say you have to be perfect. You don't have to. We're always under this pressure to think, we can always do better, and teaching is it's such a hard job. And you can be on fire one day and the next day have a bad day, but you've got to be pretty good at these things. If you're completely disorganized and you don't manage time or keep any records, you're not going to get too far. So I hope we can all agree that pedagogy is the entry requirement for this. I put relationships and connection above that. We might have all remember, and I asked you to think back about a teacher who you had, or a colleague perhaps, and maybe we immediately think, I remember, I'm thinking about my grade 3 teacher when I was in Nishimachi International School, when I lived in Tokyo as a boy, and Mrs. Folds, and she was just absolutely lovely. You walked in there and you just felt the warm embrace of the classroom, and just a wonderful person who knew us all, greeted everyone by name and cared about us if we were feeling sad. And I think I only teach grade 60, ages 16 to 18 now in the IB diploma. But, there's this sort of, it's a bit of a danger that we think, they don't need that anymore. But they do, they still need that. They need to know they're welcome in your classroom, and, being supportive. If they fall, if they don't do as well on a test, just encouraging them and saying, it's okay, you can do better. I'll help you. I'll give you a bit more time. I'll sit with you and break, and, you can do better. That sort of thing. And being approachable. If they don't feel happy to come into your room and ask for help, or to put up their hand because they're frightened, they're not going to ask any questions, and they're not going to learn as well. And they're not going to form any bond or relationship with you. It is a little bit like a parental relationship on some level, which I think could be a whole separate conversation about the nature of relationships. And there's a lot of research into that, but we'll just leave it there and say, being that sort of person. And some people, I remember when I was presenting some of this stuff to my colleagues in my previous school, One of them said, well, that's not my job. I'm here to teach. I'm here to teach the curriculum. It's not for me to ask if they, how they are or something like that. I'm there to mark the papers and mark the exams and make sure we cover the curriculum. And it just made me feel really sad. But yes, okay. Maybe there are some people out there who for whom that just isn't something they're about. But I think we can all, what we should do, I mean, my opinion, is we should recognize how important these things are to our students being inspired by us as teachers. And it might not be enough for us to just be really skillful and really good at our jobs, but we might just have to be the person who cracks a joke and knows everyone, knows. There's quite good research saying that having something in common with the kids, it means so much. If you don't talk to them and you don't know them and you don't know, his favorite artist is, I don't know, I can't think of an up-to-date artist, Kanye, whatever, and they released a new album, and have a listen to one of the songs. If it's a student you're having a hard time with, and then just talk about it. It makes a huge difference, and there's a lot of research to back that up. All right, so there's another possible thing is there are teachers who are great relationships who are not organized and don't have good time management, and I think that's fine, but I don't think they'd be an inspirational teacher. So moving up, we've got passion. So what does that mean? Well, a passionate teacher just loves their job and they love their subject. They're happy and excited to come to school, and they plan interesting lessons, and they're creative. They design. They come up with new ideas. They're forever reflecting on their practice because they think it's important, and they believe in the importance of education, and the students will feel that immediately. Enthusiasm. Okay, gosh, it's nearly the end of the year. We're all exhausted. We're marking exams, writing reports. I'd rather maybe have stayed home in bed, but you've got to fake it until you make it if you feel that way, because if you're not enthusiastic about being there, then the students won't be either. So you can forget about any inspiration on that day. So maybe. I just think being happy and excited to be there, even if you're not, it means so much to them. And showing, doing fun activities that show that. I showed this to another friend who said, "No, but I'm just not charismatic," which was true. But lovely guy. I said, you don't have to be. I don't think you have to be all of these things. And everyone's got some element of. But just knowing that these things are important, as I said before, might give you the confidence to express those things more, or might give you the desire to develop that side, that virtue of your personality, and say, I need to be a bit more enthusiastic. I had a bit of fun with this one. I thought, well, often when we're learning about concepts, we think find a non-example to help us understand what a good example would be. So it was very easy for me to think of this because I didn't have very many good memories of school, certainly from some of the teachers anyway. Let's imagine your pedagogy was fine, but in the relationships hierarchy, you're a humorless, sarcastic, indifferent, self-absorbed, contemptuous person. Well, I'm immediately seeing a face here from my childhood. But anyway, you're never going to build a relationship with a student like that. So I mean, this actually goes back to Aristotle's virtues, because the idea was that there's this sort of middle ground, right? The virtues between two vices, or the vice being one extreme and the other. You can't be too humorous. You can't have a stand-up comedy show for your lesson, but you can't be, this sort of completely boring, never cracks a smile sort of person. So somewhere in the middle, we've got the virtue. But anyway, and even if you've got good relationships and good pedagogy, if you're bored and dull and negative. So anyway, I just thought that might be a bit of fun really to think about. So try not to be any of these things. All right. So how? Well, I mean, some people might think that these. I was showing this to the director of teaching and learning at my previous school, and she said, but isn't it just that who the good ones are, and that's just the way they are, and that's that sort of. And I just thought, well, I don't think we can really leave it like that, because you can always tease something out of someone and make them a bit. I mean, we have to believe in a growth. I don't want to shower everyone with cliches, but growth mindset. We can be better. We can improve. So part of that might be the environment the teachers are in, right? So let's have a think. What, in your own experience, what factors have increased your ability to be inspirational by building and maintaining relationships and connections with your students, or sharing your passion for either just teaching or your subject itself? And then, rather than facilitating, which sorts of factors have gotten in the way and prevented you from doing those things? Give you a second to think. It's a bit funny when we're doing the presentations this way, but all right. Now, maybe I've worked in many different schools, and they've all got different cultures, and they've all got different institutional norms. And sometimes you feel like it's the environment that you're in that's stopping this or preventing it. So there's been quite a bit of research into this as well. So just to summarize it, and let's see if what you think or you've experienced tallies with what the research shows. Well, you've got to have a reasonable workload and work-life balance. All right, you can't expect teachers to be, happy, enthusiastic, and welcoming, and warm, and caring if they are just buried under a mountain of work. I just think it's pretty obvious. Teachers who want to be creative and flexible. I mentioned earlier how inspirational teaching is. It's different. I mean, we saw Robin Williams being carried up by his students, and in fact, he was fired in the end of the. Spoiler alert. Well, anyway, you should watch the film if you haven't seen it. They didn't know what to make of him, and teachers need to be autonomous. They need to be able to run with their own passions and their own interests and their own creative ways of teaching. And if you're not autonomous, then you're not going to be as inspirational. I really like this. This finding was that within the institution itself, does anybody in power or high up, or even within the staff, feel that learning in and of itself is valuable? The experiences the kids have are valuable, or is it just all about grades and all about outcomes and all about getting kids into such a university and whatever? Does it matter to anybody that my kids love coming to my class and they are talking about my subject in the corridors and they're reading a book about it, or they're going off to a museum to see, they're having their lives changed? If not, maybe not. Being connected to your colleagues, having the time set aside for that. I mean, professional learning communities where the teachers are allowed to take control of their own professional development. That's being associated with teachers feeling the freedom to teach in an inspirational way, being trusted to follow your own learning needs as a teacher. And this does kind of come down to confidence and trust. Hire great people and let them be great. You don't need to follow them around. I mean, it's different from just not bothering to observe. Habit is not a laissez-faire approach. It's trusting someone, supporting them, knowing what they're doing, celebrating what staff are doing, and understanding what it means to be an inspiration to the rest of the community. Because when you've got an inspirational teacher, the other teachers do take notice, and it raises the bar for everybody. So, I'm not expecting all teachers to teach the same way. I mean, I didn't teach at this school, but I was I was a guest at a school where they had this idea of something to do with justice and fairness. Every teacher has to do the exact same lesson plan and the exact same worksheet, and otherwise it's not fair. And you just think, I could never work there. I'm just too creative. But anyway, don't expect everyone to be the same, because we're not. It's silly. So this is pretty obvious, I think, this slide. Teachers who are burnt out, #December. And of course there's going to be problems. People have personal problems as well. You can't, if you've had a bereavement, you're not going to be clicking your heels on the way to school. But we're talking about long-term picture here. Excessive paperwork, pointless and meaningless make work tasks, and we've all been in this position where we've been faced with a pointless, meaningless paperwork and things that don't benefit student learning and don't just waste of time, really. Curriculum changes, things like Ofsted. I mean, I've read the news about the poor. I don't know if this is based in the UK, but there was a poor, obviously a very inspirational principal in a primary school in the UK, received a bad government inspection report and ended up taking her own life. So, it's not just teachers who are under the pressure of this sort of thing, it's leaders as well. If you're not trusted, if you're not supported, negative and stressful appraisal systems, all of these sorts of cultural defects will stop teachers being creative and having great relationships and being as good as they can be. So the number of research papers that I found evidence for these claims in, and the number doesn't represent how important it is, it's just how often it was mentioned. So I'm not just making it all up. I'll share some, if anyone wants to read further or have any further, whatever, get in touch with me. I'll share you my link at the end, my LinkedIn. So how can we use a model, this hierarchical model, be useful? So as I said at the beginning, I wanted to produce something that would make people think and that might help even just one other teacher to become a bit more inspirational. And that would be my dream. So that's why I did it. So if you want to be more inspirational, you could try asking yourself these sorts of questions. Do I really show my students I care? Do they think? And all of these are just based around characteristics in the hierarchy. Could I be a bit more lighthearted and humorous, or am I being a sarcastic person who's unintentionally driving a wedge between me and my own students? And have I taken enough time to get to know them personally? Do I greet them by name? Do I know where they're from? Do I know their interests and aspirations in life? And maybe you'll find that you play the same sport, or you like the same computer game or something, and you can share that. It makes a massive difference. Honestly, when you try it. Could I take a school trip? I've seen so many of my colleagues come on it, because of course, being a biology teacher, I'm off out in nature with kids, and you see, I have to ask for my colleagues to come with me because I never have enough people. But just when you're on the trip, take the time to develop that relationship, and it's so easy to just distance yourself and not want to get to know them. But kids are pretty interesting. That's one of the reasons I like being a teacher. So, all right, and you can ask all kinds of other questions based on that. Am I being passionate? Am I showing the kids that I love this subject? And have I tried to be creative? And go easy on yourself as well, because it's really not easy. I really believe teaching is an incredibly hard job, incredibly undervalued by society, and yet I think up there with doctors and policemen and all those other people, in terms of what makes the job of value and importance to society. So if we get better at our job like this, then it's good for the whole of humanity. So there's some of what I read. There's more than that. I couldn't fit it all on one slide. But if you want to contact me, there's my LinkedIn. It's on a QR code. And then my ResearchGate is there. There's a few of my other publications. And if you want to ask questions or write me an email or couldn't get in touch or just read some of my other stuff, then there's a plug. And Bethan has asked me to finish with this slide. So the end.
Super. Well, thank you very much, Stephen. That was fantastic. There were so many ideas, and it was really thought-provoking as well for everything that you've spoken about with your research and your insights working in the international context as well. I can see that the chat has been really active, which is lovely to see everyone working together and sharing thoughts as well on the chat. So thank you for everyone that's been taking part too. So over to the questions now as well. So we've got a little bit of time for questions. If you do have any that you'd like to submit, then do submit to the Q&A box and we can pick them up from there. Otherwise, I'll just pick out a few that I've seen sort of from the chat and then also from the Q&A as well. So the first one that we have had in is, how do we become inspirational to students when they don't see us as inspiring as some of the role models that they have currently in their society, say, for instance, their sports players, singers, or social media celebrities? How can we also be a role model in their eyes as well? Which is a different question, I guess.
Yeah, it's a very interesting question. My sister's ex-boyfriend was a maths. Oh, it says my internet is unstable. Am I coming through okay?
Yes, we can still hear you.
Okay, sorry. So I was going to say about my sister's ex-boyfriend was a head of maths, and he insisted on driving a Mercedes SLK sports car to work every day because he said it was the only way his kids would respect it or would look up to him. I think I always thought that was silly, but I did like driving around in his car with him. But yes, it is. It's such a good question. I mean, the boys are going to look up to footballers, and God help us when it comes to some of these, Instagram influencers and all that sort of thing. When you see all the no talent nonsense that the kids are looking up to these days. But anyway, that makes me sound old. Yes, I mean, look, we can be a person in their lives. These people that they see, in social media. They might look up to them in a way, but they're never going to get anything back from them on a one-to-one. And when there's 25 of them in the class, and you're thinking, have I reached anyone? There's always someone. There's always going to be, and I don't think we need to worry ourselves with being beloved of every single student. And I think if you're making the effort, the kids will notice. I got a lovely letter from a kid a couple of years ago who just said, I saw how much you were putting into it, and I just wanted to show you how by my hard work how much I recognized your hard work. So and I had no idea that the student wasn't one who ever said any much, one of the quiet ones. So you're never going to be David Beckham or whatever, but that makes me sound old again. But you can be someone to you can be someone to them. You can be someone, and it's hard. And I'm not gonna say it's easy.
I think what you were saying before about if there's something that maybe you found out that they like a certain singer or a blogger or something like that, and being able to tap into maybe someone that they see as a role model or the engagements that they have, and then being able to talk to them on a level as well. It might not be that they're aspiring to be the people that you think, but that taps into being able to have a conversation. As it's a one-to-one, you're not just the teacher, you're actually there to help these students and get them the grades and support them through their learning.
Well, that's great. That's a great point.
Yeah,
a great point. Although as my daughter would say, she would say, look, just as long as you're not being cringe, just as long as you're not pretending to be too cool.
Well, the emoji language, the emoji language is a whole different language that I think is left for that generation. I'm not sure that was going to be taught in schools much soon. Lovely. Okay, so we've also had I can see there's another one here as well. Let's come in. So I'm a leader within my school, and I often face trouble trying to motivate reluctant teachers. Do you have any strategies to overcome this?
Oh wow, yeah, that's the $1 million question, I guess. And I think I was thinking about that is that as an educational leader, you're kind of like the teacher and with the students, in that you have to have the relationship with the teachers you're trying to inspire to be better teachers. You have to know them, you have to care about them, you have to have a bit of banter with them and a bit of humor, and you have to know what they are like as a teacher pretty well before you try to enter into any sort of improving or helping. If a teacher's really, there's an old joke which was, how many psychologists does it take to change a light bulb? Well, only one, but the light bulb has to want to change. It's a bad joke, but the point being, if the teacher doesn't want to improve, they're adults and they can become, so maybe the challenge would be setting that fire again. How do you get someone to love education? Maybe it's the environment that they're in. Maybe it's the school structures. Maybe they don't believe anybody cares. Maybe they don't think it's important to care. Having those conversations and making them know that it is important, or that you think it's important, if you do think it's important. But that's a challenge. Probably harder than it is with students, because with a teacher they don't always have to listen or do their homework.
No, absolutely. Lovely. So I can't see any more questions in the Q&A at the moment, but we have just had a lovely comment from Simones as well. So maybe this is something just to reflect on and end on, and that they say that they've been teaching in 2 countries, a native country, the Philippines, and in Romania as well, with different educational curriculums and culture. And for me, teaching is a mission and honestly an inspiration to do so. And also, thanks very much for the webinar. So that's lovely to hear, Simona, and absolutely. Let's hope there's plenty more teachers like yourselves that's around. And lovely as well. We've just got a comment to say that love these words that you've just said, set fire to the love of education, which is absolutely, that's what we're doing. We're helping the students to activate their education and their excellence. Okay, I don't think I can see any more in the chat. Let me just double check just one moment. Oh, we have had one that's come in here actually as well. So maybe this is a teacher to teacher peer support for this one as well. So they've said that they sometimes find it hard to control students in class. Do you have any tips of how to control students? Or maybe that was pitched a little bit wrong. Not controlling students, but maybe having more order and harmony in a classroom, if that's something that you wanted in that moment.
Oh yeah, I mean, that's a whole other presentation, really. I think classroom management is at an intersection between pedagogical skill and relationships, and having strategies in place. There's a wonderful book that I read, and it's an old book, but it's called, you'll have to pardon my language here, but the book is called Getting the Buggers to Behave. And it's a great book. It's really funny. It's written by obviously a wonderful teacher, but it's full of practical strategies that I used when I was a young teacher, struggling to get 30 or 25 English kids to sit down. I mean, clear expectations. These are all the pedagogical skills. But then the relationship's a huge part of that too, because if you've got a good relationship, they won't want to upset you, or they won't want to upset the order. So there's a definite feedback, and discipline and order is one of those. I actually made another model where it was a Venn diagram showing the intersections, and one of them was classroom discipline and management. So, there's they always used to say to me, never smile, don't smile before Christmas, don't smile at the kids before Christmas, you've got to be and I just don't believe in any of that. You've just got to be just tough love. You have very firm rules and very strict understanding of what happens if you break them. Just, it's not personal. These are the rules. And if once, but I wish I could talk about it for longer. I do think it's outside of the scope of this, aside from to say relationships are a part of it as well. So
yeah, no,
it's the
absolutely.
best I can do.
No, absolutely. That's fantastic. Super. Okay, well, I think that's all we've got time for today. So just again to say thank you so much, Stephen, for a fantastic webinar. Then the QR codes, did you want to just go back a slide, Stephen? Because the QR codes, if anyone
Sure.
then does want to contact Stephen on his LinkedIn or take a look at the articles that have been referred to today, then do scan the QR codes that are on the screen now.